All right, let me get started. Everybody's time is valuable, and I just want to thank everybody for showing up and joining us for the second in our series of virtual Q&As from the sessions that took place at the end of January at the first Silicon Valley Video Summit. It was a great show. Everybody loved it. We were real excited about the turnout and the response and the ideas and the networking and the community that was getting built, and that is still getting built. And we had everything going for ourselves, except we didn't have a lot of time. Thank you, Mr. Wozniak, who came and joined us, but it did suck a little bit of time out of the program, and there wasn't time for Q&As. So this is where hybrid events come in handy. So we moved the Q&As a couple of weeks, and during the month of March, every Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific, we're holding a 45-minute Q&A with the panelists. So today's panel is making the cloud work on-prem. And we welcome our panelists. Claudia Souza from Advanced Systems Group was our lead. Todd Erdley from Videon, Chris Lemire from Accenture Productions, and John Reddell from VizRT. And we've got a couple of guests. I don't know if Dave Van Hoy is joining us, but Dave, if you can join us. And I'm also welcoming Jen Major-Hare, who's lead cloud engineer from ASG, to this panel as well. So for those of you who were there, you know what was going on. We are having our Making the Cloud Work on-prem Q&A today. Next week, we'll be following up with our Q&A on the virtual production in the real world, followed at the end of March with our final Q&A on digital first and the reality of working in a live event hybrid environment. Those are the upcoming dates. But the big date that everybody should put in their calendar, and I know it seems far off, but it'll be here before we know it, as we were talking before, January 23rd, back in Mountain View at the Computer History Museum. You'll see us, and we'll have our second annual Silicon Valley Video Summit. So stay tuned for details. You're all now on the mailing list, so you'll be hearing more about the program and some of the cool things we have planned for next year. But we also have a major partner and a major friend in ASG for all these programs. Dave Van Hoy was one of the founders and has been a mentor to me and a real great advisor. And not only did he help come up with this panel that we're discussing today, but he and I spoke about the need for jobs and career advice in Silicon Valley these days. So he said he's got a big crew of recruiters and he's hiring. So we said, hey, what the hell? Let's get a job fair going. So we're going to, at the end of this session, stay tuned. 45 minutes from now, you can jump in a Zoom room with one of the ASG recruiters are here. They've got plenty of jobs and they have plenty of advice for you. And to give you a little bit of advice about and a little bit insight what's going to happen during these job fairs, another good friend, Amy Lounsbury, is here from ASG, and she'll give you a couple of words about what's in store at the end of this session and how it's going to work. Amy?
Thanks, Marty. Like Marty said, it was so educational. It was great, the live panel. So the conversation is so important to continue these conversations. But there's also the networking component that we found to be amazing. So what we figured we would do is we would do a job fair. So stay tuned on that. We're going to be opening up 2 rooms, one room for creatives, one room for techs. You can meet our recruiters and some of our managed services team, get to know us a little bit and find out why it is a great place to work at ASG.
Well, thanks, Amy. So again, we'll give you some instructions if you've never done the Zoom room thing at the end. Just stay tuned, learn a few things, and ask some questions. That's what this is about. Here's how it works. You ask your questions in the chat. Claudia will be monitoring them, and she'll be asking them. And if there's a need, we'll bring you into the conversation. If you want to do some follow-up or you're shy, we have the speaker emails in the chat, so you can get in touch with them during or after the Zoom. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Claudia. Claudia, you ready to take it away? And again, thank you, Claudia, for your leadership here. It was a great panel. And let's have some fun for the next 45 minutes. Let's stir it up and let's get to some of the topics we didn't have time to get to back in the end of January in Mountain View. Claudia?
My pleasure. Thank you so much for putting the event on. I enjoyed all the other panels as much as I enjoyed leading this one. As a matter of fact, a few of the attendees and I have spoken since then about all the different topics we talked about, both on our panels and we heard the other panels talk about. So one of the things that I would like to start with is kind of giving a little bit of free time until we get some questions going to the panelists to look back at what we spoke about during the event. And were there any things that kind of struck you once we ended the session that you wish you'd had more time to discuss? Todd?
Yeah, it really, really great question, Claudia. Thanks again for your leadership. And Martin, thank you for your vision, man. Just you and everybody at SVG, just super duper good job. I think the thing that really, really, really fascinates me is, we talk about on-prem, we talk about cloud, we talk about them as two disparate things. And if I had the opportunity to really probe not only the panelists, but the people in the audience, what happens when we create a hybrid workflow? What can we do when we bring the two elements together, best of on-prem, best of cloud, to create different outcomes? That would be my question. And Claudia, you and I were fortunate enough to have a conversation. John, you and I were fortunate enough to have a conversation. I've had a chance to talk to some people actually that are participative today. But that's the thing that I really think that we as technologists, we as visionaries need to think through. How do we take the best of both worlds to really solve some pretty cool emerging problems?
Absolutely. John, you've done quite a bit of in-cloud, on-prem, and now the hybrid world. And I actually enjoy seeing what you're posting up on LinkedIn and what you're up to. And I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, again, thanks, Martin, and everyone at SVG for putting this on, and Claudia for the panel. These been great conversations. I think one of the major things that I've taken away from the event, and since then, were conversations about the broadcasters or content creators and their hesitation to a cloud or a hybrid environment. And as you dissect it, a lot of it reminds me of even just, talking in the last 10 years, the transition from when a Remy production was first introduced and all the hesitation, and the industry was not sure about doing those things, and the unknowns, or this isn't going to work, or where's the cost savings, and all the same topics, or all the same, I should say, button presses were there. And I see a lot of parallels right now from, like I said, customers and broadcasters with going to a hybrid workflow and where cloud makes sense for them. So that was a big one that I took away from this experience.
Yeah. It's interesting because some of the people that are now my colleagues that work within ASG were actually customers and people utilizing both traditional and virtual production tools, such as Jen Major, who's joined us today. He was actually on the team that Marissa Dorn was on, who was one of our panelists who couldn't make it today. So Jan, you've done a lot of work, both from the side of being the creative, being the operations person who has to utilize all these tools, as well as now being the person who's putting together the workflows for different customers that need to use it. How do you feel about this whole hybrid, making the cloud work on-prem? What's tough? What's been surprising for you? Because since you weren't able to join us on the panel, I guess back to even one of those questions, what are some of the most surprising things that you found to be a challenge in this new world?
So yeah, I mean, one of the, getting people to adopt it and kind of buy into it has definitely been one of the challenges when it was kind of on the client side and trying to get it hey, there are these solutions, internally, we need some stuff to happen that at the time could only have really been done with a cloud-based approach. And even still, there was a lot of hesitation as to adopting new tools there. One of the, I'll say though, one of the most surprising things though, how much people will underestimate audio. Wow, we've got the video into the system. We've got the video end to end looking great. That audio though is such a overlooked thing, I felt in terms of making sure that your audio clocking is correct and you're not having any issues introduced in transport and synchronization is maintained at all times. It can be kind of a real struggle to maintain synchronization. So that's one of those things that, I feel like I kind of had a bit of an expectation of oh yeah, the audio is going to work. I'm a video engineer. Audio, they got that. But that being kind of a real challenge was kind of a bit of a surprise. And yeah.
Yeah, I have to say that even with my experience being part of the AMP team at Grass Valley, that was something, one of the key architects there came from audio. And he always said that everybody doesn't even bother to talk about that. It's just an assumption it will work. Yet it really is the most challenging part. If we can get that to work, everything else, is easier to figure out. One of the participants was, Kyle. Hi, Kyle. Kyle is one of our customers from Global Leadership. He was asking Jen Major, do you have any tips for bringing those along who are hesitant to try the cloud workflows and a little nervous to try this new technology?
I mean, one of the things is really, just getting it in front of people and getting it so they can see it. I know that there's a lot of concerns about if we need to be sending stuff into the cloud, how long is that going to take? How much latency are we going to have? Are we going to be able to have people talking to each other? Are we going to have these kinds of conversations? People are used to these video calling systems, we're on Zoom and it's cool. These WebRTC applications can do really low latency audio and video. Are they the best for production? And when you move that quality up to be more broadcast quality, can you still do that with the latency that you could have these conversations? And really, I don't know, I feel one of the ways is really just getting it in front of people and being able to demonstrate how effective and what kind of latencies you can actually get out of these solutions.
Yeah. How about you, Chris? Have you experienced some of that hesitancy with people being afraid to try the new technology or hesitant, concerned it's not going to work as well as what they're used to with traditional methods?
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. We've got hesitancy because most people, I think it's been mentioned a few times here as well, is on the delay side. What is the quality of video going to look like in cloud? When we talk about hybrid cloud and on-prem, how are we going to get signals out of our studio facilities? Is it going to work well? Are we going to see a delay? What's the performance of the application? What's the quality of the live feed going to be when we're all done? There's been some hesitancy, but I will tell you that in a number of POCs we're working on right now in the cloud, it's doing very well. The performance has been there. And I think we mentioned this while we were at the show, is that if you've got good architecture and you design it with security and performance up front, you'll get the performance you need out of the system. And it's been doing a great job. Actually, I think today we built a new studio in Washington, D.C., which is in about 90% completed, and we've got our cloud production environment up and running and connected to that studio as of this morning, and everybody's very impressed with it. So it's working out really well.
Congratulations. That is fantastic. It's interesting. Some of the articles I've been seeing out there are dealing with, is the cloud really worth it? What's interesting that I've been seeing now are articles that are saying, if you've got the right partners, the right vendors, the right partners that are guiding you along the way, we can set up cloud systems that absolutely are worth it, both technically, commercially, and really assist. So if you're thinking the cloud isn't worth it, chances are you haven't gotten the right technology, the right vendors involved, and the right experience and expertise to assist you in making it work, because there are a lot of us making it work day in and day out with a lot of different customers. So let me see. Well, Kyle, if you don't want to be put on the spot, it's okay. We didn't talk about this early, but you've utilized both. You obviously do large events and small events that are completely on-prem. You're now beginning to try to utilize some of these cloud technologies to expand the events, your ability to do more things or doing more events. What's been the benefit for you? What's been the drawback? How are you feeling about it right now?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Claudia. For me, the cloud has just opened up a world of possibilities. It has been fantastic just seeing the tools that for us, we're using AMP has afforded us. I was in a kind of creative production meeting with our team just the beginning of this week, and we're looking at doing multiple hosting segments for multiple different audiences at the same time. And Jan Major was right in that audio is always the last thing that is thought about. And I was the venue infrastructure will not handle multiple audio feeds, but we can do it in the cloud. And for me, my challenge is now taking these very focused on-prem people and getting them to think in that kind of cloud-based environment. And I think it's going to have to just be sitting them down and showing them, hey, this works. And as we look at doing live interpretation, multiple kind of outputs with master control in the cloud, the tools available have been great. And Claudia, you're right. If I have been very blessed working with you guys, and you've shown me the right tools to use, and the possibilities are almost endless.
Absolutely. The theme is coming across from all of you in the same way. The next phase is not the technical part, it's the people part. How do we get people comfortable with the new technologies? And I think the POC route, like it or not, really proving that concept, getting people in front of the systems, I think we did a trial event where we were shadowing your first event so that you could experience it without the fear of it being on air. So those baby steps, I think, are a great way to get people on board.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually that first event where we were trialing the system, we ended up going live with it because of a need that we had. And so the flexibility to be able to say to our production team, hey, no, actually, I can do that. That's easy. And making the switch from that kind of demo testing environment into a live environment was fantastic and seamless.
I'm always amazed by how our customers are using the technology. Even as we create the technology, we have a certain vision of what we think you can do with it. But once you get it out there into the hands of customers, the ways that you use it sometimes are beyond what we even thought about doing. We have a question from the audience. Let's see. Oh, it's for Marty. Question for Todd and any other technology vendor. What are the business challenges that this tech transition is causing you, your engineers, and your sales team? A subject so near and dear to my heart.
I think it's a great question. And Marty, thanks for teeing it up because, we're talking about the TikTok. Everything is solved on-prem. Now everything can solve in cloud. And so the answer is water finds a level. But what that really does is if you're going to be a device on-prem, you can't think on-prem anymore. You have to develop your technology to think cloud because it has to be a very synchronized workflow all the way up. And so the challenge that we have really leaned into, and I think it's key for the industry, is that everything must be cloud controlled. And that is irrespective if it's a cloud element or an on-prem element. And once you put in that holistic workflow, then you can really, really start to create integrations that heretofore have not been possible. You can deploy tools at scale. You can create outcomes that were not possible. You can use best available compute resources depending on what the application is. So for Videon, where we've really, really, really changed is to think cloud-like using on-prem devices to start that journey in the most expedient way. So it's a very, very, very important change in mindset.
Yeah. I feel you could do an entire panel, Marty, on exactly that point. The business side. All the vendors wanted to fix the technology side. The biggest challenge is latency and how to make everything timing, how to make everything work. But quite honestly, I found that after we went through the proof of concept with many, many customers globally, and we got the technologists of the company super excited and wanting to move forward with it, then we reached the actual challenge. How do you get through just budgeting, purchasing, forecasting? What is this really going to cost me overall? We're so used to a way of budgeting things a year in advance. We know we want to buy that switcher. It costs that much. Put it in the, budget. Completely different here with OpEx, with SaaS, with pay as you go based on consumption. You are opening up a huge discussion on the business model, the security model, and even the legal model. Many vendors have these master purchase agreements and master support agreements with customers, and customers, just throw it in there. But in all actuality, selling SaaS, buying SaaS is a completely different thing that you need new programs, even for us, for the people reselling it. It's a whole new game. So that would be a fun panel to have next year. Let's see. we've got, another, I agree with Claudia, POC is the best way to get people on board. So this brings up a good, interesting point. When we're talking about POCs, I think one thing to talk about is, as we've all been doing POCs now for a few years with different customers, what have you found to be something lesson learned that you're going to be doing differently from this point forward as far as POCs? I know for me, it's putting in kind of a great scope of work. What are we trying to accomplish with this POC? What defines success with it? What's going to be the next step? Because I found that customers, there's so much new around this that people could spend 2 years on a POC and still not sure what to do. Chris, Todd, John, you've had a lot of experience with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. POCs are a phrase that's used by individual customers because they're proving it to themselves, or they're wanting us as vendors to prove it to them, right? But you just said yourself, we've been doing POCs for 2 years. At that point, we're not proving that the technology works. We are showing the technology working, and it's the customer that is needing to have their mind changed. It's really, we start using the phrase, they want to try it before they buy it, right? Mm-hmm. Because at this point, we're not actually proving anything, because cloud or transporting a hybrid workflow, this is working. And to also settle some nerves, broadcasters, content creators, whatever have you, even if it's on the corporate level, everyone thinks they have a different workflow. Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks they're unique. And while there might be some reality to that in my signals come here in this format, there's still a signal path. There's still possibly some transcoding. You're doing some type of video mixing with some graphics, and then you're doing distribution. Nothing is changing from everybody's workflows. It's just, what tool am I using now? Am I moving from a hardware-defined workflow to a software-defined workflow? And now that tool is different. So now operators or broadcasters are not used to doing things in that way. It's a unfamiliarity with a specific tool. But in a lot of times, and especially like at VizRT, we have Viz Trio, our graphics CG, and that's software running on hardware, and we can do that on-prem, and we have it running in cloud. And once the customer accesses that software running in cloud, and they sit down and they start hitting the keyboard and they move the mouse and they say, well, wait a second, there's no difference, right? Like they can't tell, the operator can't tell a difference, because they're actually using the same exact tool that they're using inside of a truck or inside of a studio, that they are now just accessing in a different way. So a lot of that POC talk is definitely getting customers comfortable with it, and sitting them down, having them press the buttons, and like the example was earlier, shadow cutting, and saying, like, guys, we're gonna act like you're doing it for real, or that it's going out, right? Because only then are you gonna get that feeling that you're actually making television. If I'm sort of mindlessly cutting cameras and just saying okay, just going through the paces, I'd never feel like I'm actually doing a production, right? So I think there is absolutely value in doing POCs, but I think at some point too, the definition has started to change.
I hear you. The idea of the proof of concept carries a lot with it. There's a lot of expectations that go around that. And you're right. For the most part, the concept has been proven. What I find interesting is that POCs are about getting somebody comfortable with the new technology. I also am seeing something interesting. Throughout my really long career, I'll try not to date myself, I found that there was a lot of brand loyalty akin to religion. many customers, it's these are the cameras we use, or this is the switcher, or this is the replay, and their graphics. I mean, it is set for life. Have you found that the cloud kind of gives you a new opportunity to talk to some customers that had maybe gone a different path long ago? Or as customers, do you find that you're a little bit more willing to try someone else's version of whatever that is that you would have been close to in an on-prem world? And this is open to anyone who wants to pop in.
I think it's a really, really, really fascinating question, because when you think about the on-prem workflow, so often that on-prem workflow is expensive to deploy, hard to crew, and so it's isolated to a particular set of events. And what the cloud is doing, and what these hybrid cloud workflows are doing, is they're unfurling a whole new set of opportunities to move content from any number of disparate points into the cloud for enhanced user experiences and deeper fan engagement. And so that fact that we are giving the ultimate customer a new set of opportunities, it's demanding that people are rethinking. And so brand loyalty and fixation on certain workflows is now being transcended for people to experiment. And that's where the POCs actually get really interesting. I'll loop all the way back to that POC point, because we're beyond now the point where we're wondering, do we have quality, reliability, and cost? And we're solving those points. Chris made the exact right point. But now we're starting to experiment with POCs in totally new workflows. And I think that's the part that's very, very exciting, where brand loyalty and wonderment starts to overcome us so that we do different things. Very exciting stuff.
Well, Chris,
I have to jump into this, because like brand loyalty and like you were saying, like the religiousness of users and brands. And listen, like, as a vendor, of course, we want users to continue to use our tools. Also, the other side of that, though, with this technology, we're seeing a chance to introduce new logos to our customers on a different, set of tools, right? So, as a cloud POC goes, a great opportunity. Now, we're not proving the workflow. We're now in this sense. Let's look at different tools. If we're looking at a switcher, if we're looking at a graphics machine, maybe it's quick turnaround, maybe it's ingest, maybe it's distribution. These are all cogs of our production. But don't look at just the logo of the software or the vendor that you're constantly using. That's a crutch. And I understand, as an operator myself, I want to use the things that I know. But you're doing yourself a disservice not comparing that product or that logo to another, because there's a high probability that somebody new in this cloud space could do the same job, if not more efficient, than another logo or a brand that you're used to, right? We're seeing this all the time. Like, do you need a full CG? Can I do it with HTML5? How many different versions of quick turnaround or ingest are there in the market? How many different playout vendors are there? What are all these different options and the interoperability with other vendors? There's nothing that's going to change about how we're doing productions from a standpoint of when I walk into a production truck, when I walk into a studio. These are multi-logo facilities. It's a different switcher. It's a different comm system. It's a different graphics machine. That is not going to change just because we go to cloud. I would never state to tell a customer, well, go with one ecosystem. That is not the way to go. But what I can't stress enough, please look at options when you're comparing it. Compare two switchers together, compare two graphics generators together, compare tools, because something that you've been using for the last 20 years might not be the answer moving forward in a scalable, hybrid, or cloud way moving forward. Sorry, rant over.
No, I totally get it.
Yeah.
I feel you from having been a vendor for many years.
Yeah.
Chris, you've had to make some of these decisions. I'm curious on a couple things. One, have you changed some of your, and you don't have to name vendors, but in general, have you found that your workflow has been changing and that you've been more interested in what new is out there? And then as we head into NAB, what are we looking forward to? What new vendors, what new technologies, what holes in that ecosystem that no one vendor can fulfill? What are the holes we have there that still aren't fulfilled? And who are we excited to look? And it doesn't have to be a specific manufacturer, but what type of technologies are we all excited to see at NAB? So Chris, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, on the proof of concept side, we've done proof of concepts all throughout the deployment. And I mean, we're not doing a proof of concept on whether or not this is going to work, because we're going this direction. We're trying to figure out how to make it work better. So we proof of concept the network, we proof of concept the cloud environment, we proof of concept all the tools. We proof of concept all of the systems that are going into that platform all along the way, and then we do the proof of concept. Sorry, I'm going to on the recording side, but we've also proof of concept now what's happening on the operational side. The advantage it gives us, right, and you're mentioning this with vendors. There's two really big vendor options that are very positive on the cloud side that you don't get with your physical infrastructure. And that's number one, you can have multiple vendors, right? So to think about going and sorry, John, right? But to switch out a production switcher in a physical environment would be very difficult to do. But on a production switcher in the cloud environment, I can do that in a snap, right? So we're looking at, every single tool that we have in the cloud environment today. We're looking at different options and which other vendors that we can test and measure against different types of systems, right? One vendor might have a good production switcher, another vendor might have a really good playout device. So in that respect, what are we looking for at NAB? We're looking for vendors that give us interoperability in the cloud and back and forth between on-prem and the cloud. I will name a vendor because I think it's worth it for folks to take a look at this vendor. This is one of the most impressive things I've seen with cloud so far. The company is called Switch.io. We all remember back with the software-defined networking. When we were at the Silicon Valley Summit, we talked with the Cinti folks about interoperability between on-prem and cloud. How do we get 2110? Where do we get multicast? When are these formats going to come for us in our cloud environments? I'm stuck with SRT. They said they're going to work on it. Well, it seems to me like Switch.io has figured out a software-defined network that's an overlay on top of your cloud system and bridges between your on-prem 2110 and multicast into the cloud. And it's a virtual NIC for each one of our VMs. So different vendors can now be interoperable with each other. So I can move multicast in the cloud now, say it between Everest Bravo and Grass Valley's production switcher, right? So these two systems can sit side by side and share content with each other. So that's really what we're looking for now as we go, into NAB and start looking at technologies. Contribution, right? So how do we get contribution from, we're in the enterprise video space, right? So how do we get teams virtualized and contributing content directly into our environments as opposed to still being hardware based? How do I get multicast out of a Teams PC that's virtualized in the cloud? So these things are all stuff that we're starting to look at now. Yeah, there's some good options out there. But yeah, I would encourage. We're going to do a POC with Switch.io with Everest. I'll just name the vendors right out, right, and see how that goes. But I expect it'll go pretty well because it looks like great technologies. They're very smart. I don't think I've ever seen a true SDVN. We talked about software-defined networks, right, years ago, but it looks like they've actually been able to achieve it, which is good.
There's a lot of exciting things to test out. There's still a long ways to go. I mean, Jan, you're designing these systems day in and day out. You've operated the systems. I know we talk a lot about interoperability and some other subjects near and dear to your heart about, okay, you've got the workflow physically working. What else do you need? What else is important in this hybrid world?
So actually, like that stuff that Chris just said, I am legit impressed or I'm interested in that. I'm like, wait, you got a multicast solution in the cloud? Okay, I hadn't seen that before. I need to check that out. the POC being a big thing for cloud is kind of, it brings out the advantages and troubles with cloud, because there's so many different things that you can do. And so when it becomes like, wait, I can just build a machine and have it test this today, it becomes very wide open as to you've got so many different tools to be playing with. And yeah, it does need that glue to get everything together. So a lot of the stuff that I'm interested in is some of the glue levels, the orchestration. What is it that when I have all these different systems that are different vendors trying to do different things, what ties them together? Do I need to go into each individual system and know each individual thing, or is there something that can kind of just hold it all together and give me a single pane of glass to look at the entire system? So yeah, trying to find the ways of tying that stuff together, I think is kind of the big focus for me. Really is, if you have all the options in the world, that's a difficult thing to put in front of operators. You now need to learn literally everything. So trying to find the happy medium of how to solve problems and how to make it actually be approachable to people and understandable is really, it's the interesting challenge. And that's kind of my focus of what I'm looking for at NAB and what I'm looking for in solutions, really.
So I'm going to pull it, John, and I'm just going to impassionately say yes, because I'm going to use your phraseology, single pane of glass, simplifying this. Let's not make people think about 17 different products required to create an overall workflow. We as technologists, as product companies, are creating real disasters with the complexity that we are putting into these systems. And if we really commit to an API first with a single pane of glass solution, our ability to scale for customer needs is before us. And I don't care if it's the camera, I don't care if it's the on-prem video compute device, I don't care if it's the cloud. All elements have to commit to that vision that you just stated very eloquently. So here for that vision.
I couldn't agree more. I think, at first we were focused very much on that interoperability and the monitoring and control. And we talked a little bit about that when we were in person at SVV, the on-prem and cloud ability to monitor and to control and to have, a single orchestration. But more and more, even since then, what's been coming out is this idea that you all touched on of simplicity. You look at some of these systems, and I have to say, I work with really brilliant people who can get so into the weeds. So they get in there into the deepest levels of each of these products, and they can make the thing sing. But at the end of the day, for our customers, if we can't make it simple, and I don't mean because they aren't super technical, but nobody or no operator wants this incredible, insane thing where I've got to jump between 6 different windows to get something done. So we're beginning to focus more on how can we simplify the user interface with the single pane of glass, the single place you go to, and even designing some of those systems. So we utilize, Viz, we utilize Videon, we utilize everybody's products, Grass and Ross and everybody's, but how can we present this to the end user where not just the workflow is simple, but what matters is what they see. It's behind the scenes, it can be super complicated, but can we make it easy to operate, easy to support, easy to update? Because if we don't, I fear of how long and how far cloud will go. If you need to hire 10 engineers and send them to school for a year just to keep this going. And despite us being able to offer, our resources from our managed service team to jump in there and be at your company for a year as an embedded employee to get you through that process and help everyone learn it, that's not a viable solution for every customer. So we need to find a way to keep it simple. So curious, let's see if there are any more questions. Nothing else. Oh, let's see. So keeping it simple allows me to focus on other things. That's a great point, Kyle. If we can keep the technology simple and the interface simple, you guys can spend your time figuring out neat new ways to use this ecosystem. and maybe more tiers of events or more events you can do per year. Let's get to that next level of cloud where it's not replacing what you do now with what you do now in the cloud, but it's being able to do more things for less so that you can actually expand with all this extra consumption of content. How can we empower you to be able to have more content available for your customers in an affordable manner, whether it's pop-up, being able to really scale for, larger periods or periods where you need more intense work, or just being able to afford to do things that is not that, super expensive room that you have. With that going, Marty, let me ask you, do you want us to keep going with questions, or I see we're about 45 minutes in?
Yeah, I think we're almost there, but let's do a quick lightning round, and I'll start with you, Claudia. Chris was pretty straightforward to what he's seeing and pretty excited. Is there any technology or any company that you've really got your eye on that everybody should keep an eye out for in Vegas in April?
Again, I think we're going there not specifically for one company, because for us, it's really important to see all of our vendors we're currently with that have new technologies that we weren't aware of or they've been developing that are cloud-based. Or more also, it's the going out there and finding that glue. It's finding the people and the new little companies that are doing individual unique things that can plug those holes that are missing. So we've got some great anchor tenants in our cloud world. Now I need all the bits and pieces. And then it's the, year ahead after that to make sure that we're testing the interoperability between all of those systems and designing the workflows to be simple, and even leveraging some of those companies so that we can offer a more all-inclusive, easy to use, packaged, here's your, virtual PCR, here's your event tool that you need, without you needing to know what all is in the soup. I want to give you the end product soup instead of telling you about every single ingredient when you come to us.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up. But John, anything quick about it we should keep an eye out from Viz or anybody else that you're working with at NAB?
Definitely stop by our booth. We'll be showing off some really cool stuff. A lot of cloud. I mean, the focus of Viz, our mission is to use our software-defined tools and use them both on-prem and in cloud. And some of the stuff that we have cooked up for Las Vegas is really, really cool. And stop through the AWS booth and see all the vendors and the technology and where this is progressing extremely rapidly. It's going to be great. The biggest thing that I have is, and I'll just echo it, is the interoperability. What things can help bring this all together, or help fill in those gaps. It's fantastic, and I look forward most to talking to other vendors and working with them. Like, hey, Everts, let's work on a POC together. Let's figure out a way to replace GPIs in the cloud, as an example, right? That's a thing in the cloud in my head as a technical director I'm thinking about. So as an example, I'm looking forward to conversations like that.
Hey, Marty, I'll take 10
I'll be a customer.
Together
on that, I'll be a customer for that.
Good. Todd?
So we're also going to be in that AWS booth showing off in a soccer demo. We're going to be in that Panasonic booth and always showing that towards that vision of single pane of glass and interoperability and integration. And those GPI triggers, there's a way to solve it. So we'll talk about it later. But AWS booth and Panasonic booth for Videon showing off single pane of glass implementation points.
And Jan?
I haven't really gone through all the things that are going to be at NAB, so I don't know who all the vendors are. But I mean, for instance, we've been looking into, data miner for, kind of doing a lot of monitoring. There's also another system, NMS. I forget their whole name, but they did another thing for monitoring and orchestration of stuff. And it's really amazing what you can actually do when you build the systems from that point of view, and like how they can actually tie together all the different pieces of equipment. So that's what I want to see more of.
And Chris, you already tipped your hat at a company, Switch.io. Anybody else we should keep an eye out for?
Well, no, we're going to look at data miner as well, right? So I've done some data miner installation in past years, and I have not seen what their cloud offering is like, but I don't think we really layered on the monitoring and the automation that we need, which is interoperability still between our on-prem and our cloud environment. And Lemire with their capabilities to actually monitor and manage storage, plus automating events in live environments gives us a hybrid solution between our post and our live production environments. So can they manage the storage in our post-production environment, and can they manage the automation in our live environment? And Lemire is a great product, right? For sure. And we'll take
Thank you. And Claudia, any final words before we hand it off to Amy?
No, just looking forward to seeing what we're going to be talking about in January. How much will have changed from now until then? What new exciting things we hadn't even thought of during this event? What's January going to be like? So really looking forward to it, Marty.
All right, find me a keynoter that I can top Wozniak. All right, while you're at it. All right, so I got it. So do me a favor. I got problems. But with that said, I thank you, the panelists. I thank you guys. We're gonna try something, a bit of an experiment with Amy. You want to join me here, and we're gonna go into the breakouts, everyone, and learn a little bit about how to work, find jobs, what kind of jobs are out there. Maybe you're hiring. You may want to meet some of these smart people. That Amy, you wanted to give us a little bit of a preview, and then we can all head out into the break rooms.
Yeah, super brief, but yeah, I agree with Claudia on. Can't wait until the next one to see what's new and what's changed over the past 12 months. So Silicon Valley Video Job Fair by ASG is now commencing. We've got 2 breakout rooms. We've got one room for creatives. One room is for techs. But as we all know, a lot of us creatives have gone into tech. A lot of us techs have gone into creative. So look, if you're both, join either room. It's totally fine. We've got a great team that is going to tell you how amazing it is to work at ASG, and also find out a little bit more about you and see if we can plug you into some opportunities. If we don't have a current opportunity, we've got new opportunities all the time. So yeah, join up either of the rooms and let's talk.
Well, thanks, Amy, and thanks everybody. So if you've done the Zoom thing before, breakout room, you've done it before, you know how it works. There are these 4 little squares. The bottom in the menu at the bottom of Zoom, just click on those. You'll see 2 options. You'll see a breakout for creatives in room 1. You'll see a breakout for creatives in room 2, and have some conversations. Meet Andrew, Savannah, Kira, and Carlos, and see what the future brings. And remember, we're going to be back here next week, same time, and we'll be talking about virtual production. So thanks if you're taking off. Thanks for joining us. And if you want to do some breakouts and look around the job fair, join us now in those breakouts.
Yeah, let's
Thank you,
talk.
everyone.